Last summer, it was Kevin Durant wanting to go to the Phoenix Suns. This summer, Damian Lillard wants to go to the Miami Heat. What's the same? What's different? We'll give you our haters guide, our Phoenix guide to the Damian Lillard talks on today's episode of Locked On Suns.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 6 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show wherever you get your podcasts. A big thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen. Happy Thursday. The week is almost over. Summer League is almost over, but the offseason is in full swing. We're here for you every single day. All you got to do is hit follow or subscribe. Search Locked On Suns wherever you listen or watch podcasts, including YouTube. We're free everywhere. We're here every day. Become an everydayer. Get locked on to your favorite team, the Phoenix Suns, throughout the offseason and beyond. A lot to talk about today. When it comes to the offseason and some news at the end, Aaron Edwards is here as he is every week to help us sift through what is going on in Suns world. Although in this case, we're going to take a quick flight to the Pacific Northwest, the city that I know you have some connections in and a little bit of a fondness for, Aaron. And I have to admit, we're going back to the Durant talks. We're transporting ourselves back about a year exactly here. And I'm not going to lie, I think that was the prime of this podcast. I think that every single show that I did from about June 30th through about September when the boardroom logoed team statement came out was peak Locked On Suns. Ever since then, I've just been going downhill. I know I have a lot more subscribers than I used to. I know there's a lot more to talk about now than there was then, but I'm not going to lie. Anyone who was there back then, that was where it was. But let me just ask you this. Let me ask you a real question here, because I think the similarities and the parallels are unmistakable. It's two older players who might have fudged the timing of their demand, request, whatever you want to call it. Two guys who everybody thinks love basketball too much to really be jerks about it, and guys that only have one destination on their minds. I have some other ways that I think there's some similarities and differences, but I think the obvious ones are right there. Do you think this plays out the same way we saw the Durant thing play out? Do you think there's a wrinkle still to come? Or where do you land on this Lillard sweepstakes, this saga that is already feeling very similar to last summer?
I think last week or something, I tweeted just the entire playbook for it. I was like, all right, this is how it's going to happen, Miami fans. You're going to forget about it for a little bit because it's taking too long. And then you're just going to be like, this is never happening. It was really fun. It's weird. We got tricked, whatever. And then you're going to go through the season not really thinking about it. You're going to be like, God, this team can't win a ring. I don't think this team as it is can win a ring, but we can't do anything else about it. And then one day before the Super Bowl, you're going to be like, Kevin Durant plays for who now? And that's how it's going to be. Like, it's going to be a bunch of other dudes getting moved, and you're going to be like, oh, man, like, are we going to make a move? Like, our dude's just sitting here. And then out of nowhere, like, he's finally going to get what he wants. And everybody that was fighting the deal that was probably talked about in the summer even, like, I think the deal that we wanted to give them was probably what we already, like, we're going to give them during the summer. I think somebody just waited to say yes. I think the deal that's already been explained is going to be the one that happens in February for Dame, but everybody's just kind of being jerks about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure they can wait till February, but we can get to that later. I think the interesting part is exactly where you just got to, which is this idea that I've been messaging with this Pelicans fan because I started out blogging about the Pelicans like 10 years ago, and I still have people who follow me who care about that team. But it is interesting because obviously they come from a smaller market, and that's a factor in this with the Portland part of it. That wasn't quite the same way, with Brooklyn and Phoenix being the two major players last summer. And, his point was basically one of the main distinctions is the Nets didn't actually ever want to trade Durant in the first place. And I like, so we'll get to the part of it of whether the Blazers can afford to play it the same way. I tend to think that they can't because they don't have Kyrie Irving and a cast of role players to convince that Lillard that they can actually compete. That's literally why he demanded a trade, whereas Durant, it was a little different. But I wonder, it's even funny to look that there's an ownership cloud hanging over this Portland situation too that's kind of getting talked around but not exactly talked about. That team could end up being sold at some point in the not too distant future, and that's probably a factor here, and that was the same with the Suns. Do you think the Suns ever actually made an offer that included Mikal Bridges last year or not?
I don't think they did. I think that was James Jones's hang up. I think it seems like that's what Ishbia was like, do it. Like, no, do that one. And no more hanging on to this. Like, just do it and get it out of the way. I think that's what Ishbia's big change was. I think James Jones was pretty sad on never giving up Mikal.
Yeah,
but and like right. I tweeted to you, I was like, there's no Mikal in this. Like, there's no player that's really holding this up. Tyler Hero's not holding this up. Duncan Robinson's not holding this up. Dame wants to play with Bam and Jimmy Butler. Everybody else is replaceable, and I don't think there's anybody good enough to be like, no, we're not going to give up Caleb Martin. Like, he's not going to hold this up. I think it's really just the Portland not wanting to give up Dame, and they're going to make him like work for this, and they're going to make him like stretch this out. Like, do you want the fans in Portland to hate you if you sit out the place that you spent almost your entire career at? Do you want them to hate you every time you come back here? And we're going to see if you're willing to sit out games at the beginning of the season for it. And I think that's really what the Blazers are doing.
So that's part of it, right? Because I think a lot of people feel right now, and I went on a little bit of a rant about this last week, or maybe even on Monday's show this week, I can't remember, where it seems like people feel as if the Suns package that ended up going out for Durant was good enough that the embarrassment of finally giving in was palatable because they got back a lot of stuff. And I just disagree with that completely. And I think people are telling on themselves when they say that. Although I will admit that the Miami offer is not as good as what the Phoenix package is in theory, but also Lillard's not as good as Durant. He's more expensive. And, you know, it's a different situation for each team between Portland and Brooklyn. I actually think if Portland can get a couple of extra picks for Tyler Hero that eventually get back to them and Hero goes somewhere else, the package is pretty darn good for a team that already has a lot of core pieces, whereas the Nets did not have that. They wanted the players. But the reason I feel like people are telling on themselves is, what did we hear? We talked about this all summer. You were on every week with me the whole time this was going on. People were laughing at how bad the Suns offer was, even at its best. Assuming Mikal wasn't going to be in it, but I think even when we thought Mikal might be in it, people did not think it was good enough. And
people were saying we needed to add Book into the deal. It was getting weird. And I think that's kind of like where it got probably weirder is the deal that we gave them. People were saying we lost it now when they were saying before that the Suns need to add Book to the deal to get KD. I think that they're not going to ever get that far for the Dame thing, but I think in general, we probably had the weirder one just because KD, he was pretty open. He said the Suns are his top spot, but other teams were able to join in on that. Bobby Marks was openly releasing teams, people's deals that were offered so he could hurt other teams. I don't think it's going to get that ugly, mostly because it's just one-sided. Only the Blazers don't want this to happen.
That's exactly. I mean, you're preaching to the choir. That's exactly what I think was ridiculous about the whole thing. Is last summer the Suns had this embarrassing, laughable offer that they couldn't even get to the table, and the fact that KD was so cute to think he was going to end up in Phoenix, despite them having a pile of garbage to give back for him. Then it's February 10th, and a lot of the analysis is like, man, the Suns really mortgaged their future. They're giving up that. Meanwhile, we're coming off a stretch in December and January where understandably people probably were not watching this team very closely, but Mikal and Cam and different guys, well, not so much Cam, he was recovering from an injury, had all the opportunity in the world to prove that they could be those guys, and they did not prove that. So, and one of the dudes who went out was Jay Crowder, who was never going to play here again. So it's a fundamental thing. It's very sports media in general to just evolve and change your take for whatever sounds the coolest the moment that it happens. I get that. I'm sure I've done it. I do a show every day. We all have to kind of do our thing, but that's the hilarious part of this. And I feel like it will happen with Miami, where they will give up a trade. Hero will go to some third team. They will get a pick or two back for Hero. Portland will get, 4 firsts and Jaquez and Jovic and whatever. And, by January, Jovic will be having a nice year. Jaquez will do some good things. That pick will look solid because Miami doesn't, go too hard in the regular season. And it's like pick 21. And you will hear people say that Portland got a nice reset package back for Lillard when he went to the Heat. That will happen. Like, write it down.
Yeah, it's exactly what's going to happen. It's the playbook. It's it. Like I said earlier, like we're saying now, it's the exact same playbook as Durant. Durant played, though. So that's what I think is kind of going to be the deal sealer, is how far is Dame willing to take this? Because it, like, from what I was hearing, like, Dame was like, I don't want you guys to use that pick. And it seems like they told Dame for months that they weren't going to use that pick, that they were going to trade it to get him a piece to play with, and it didn't happen. And that seemed like the bomb. Like, that seemed like the deal sealer. And with KD, it was just the entire thing. I think he wanted out from the start, and he played ball still, and he played really well. Like, he was hooping before he got hurt. And it seems like the Nets were like, all right, like, he played and he was really balling until he got hurt, so let's just give him what he wants.
Yeah, let's transition there because I think that is interesting. It relates a little less to the Suns, although we can talk about the final kind of thing that got it over the finish line when it did come to February and revisit that a little bit. But that's the thing that will be interesting here because, again, Durant went back with Kyrie and a bunch of interesting role players. Dame's going back to a team that just got a lottery pick. That's a big distinction. What will happen there? We'll talk about it next. First, today's show brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is coming in, making therapy online better, more efficient, and easier for everybody who is interested. Sometimes in life, we're faced with tough choices, and the path forward may not always be clear. Whatever that means for you, whether you're dealing with decisions around your career, relationships, or anything else, therapy helps you stay connected with what you really want while you navigate life so you can move forward with confidence and excitement. Trusting yourself to make decisions that align with your values is like anything. The more you practice it, the easier that it gets. I always say this when we're talking about BetterHelp because it's a product I believe in, but it does not have to be something extreme. It does not have to be something that feels like it should make you go to therapy. It can just be a way to handle what life is throwing at you, have somebody to speak with, have somebody to vent to, whatever way it makes sense for you. I promise it will help. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA for 10% off your first month. All right, Aaron, so let's continue on our conversation here about Kevin Durant, the blueprint, the playbook, and what it means for Damian Lillard. As I was saying to start this whole thing off, if I can pat my own back a little bit again, we did the show the day that the Sean Marks, Joe Tsai, Kevin Durant, Rich Kleiman statement came out, which is just, it should be in the, I've never been to the Basketball Hall of Fame. They should have a poster board of that stuck somewhere about this era of the NBA. Maybe the tweet next to the Paul Pierce rocket ship emoji picture tweet. But that was, we were right on that too. We both said, we're not going to keep doing podcasts about this every week because there's more important stuff to get to, but this is not the end of this. A month later, Steve Nash gets fired. A couple months after that, KD gets hurt. Kyrie starts missing games. They start losing. And before long, Kyrie is a Dallas Maverick. Kevin Durant is a Phoenix Sun. Can that happen with Damian Lillard? Because on the one hand, I actually think he's less likely to be the bad guy, but there's also way less credible case that, you know, that front office can make to him to say, hey, let's just try this again, blah, blah, blah. They have to be developing these young guys. It's against them, their best interest to try to bring Lillard back because that's exactly why they benched him to end last season.
Yeah, I think the different part is I truly believe when they started the season, the Nets, like those guys thought they were going to finish that season with the Nets. I thought that like they started out hot. Like they were like looking like a great playoff team that would be a tough out. And you can tell like they were planning to hoop together. With Dame, it'll be weird. Like, yes, it'll be weird if he sits, and Portland fans will have the right to be mad because he's waiting to get traded. But if he comes back, it's just a star playing that's waiting to be traded. Like, you're pretty much like renting Dame for a couple months, and while he's on the court doing Dame stuff, like look like he wants to not be there, and he's probably saying behind closed doors like, I'm playing ball, but I don't want to be there. KD was hooping because he planned on being a net. I truly believe that.
Do you think the way this all played out made Sean Marks look better than if he had just traded Kevin Durant last summer for a little bit of a lesser package? Like, I think if they had really gotten down to it personally, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I think if the Nets had actually played ball in negotiations last summer, we might have gotten to a point where Mikal was on the table. I think Mikal partially never got offered because it became clear that Durant wasn't getting traded. They didn't want to do that, and they weren't going to, and that Durant wasn't going to push the buttons hard enough to make it happen. I think they could have gotten Mikal last summer. Do you think that like the impression and perspective and reputation of that Nets front office somehow benefited because they like dragged it out another 8 months? Because that's kind of what it like. I feel people cheering for the Blazers front office now of like, don't give in and this and that. It's like, if the trade's going to be the same either way, I don't really get why we want these guys to just like prolong it so that we can like pat them on the back afterward.
Yeah. I think that Marks made it very obvious he didn't want to trade KD. Like, once he leaked the Jaylen Brown trade, like, you can tell that he wanted to just hurt teams. Like, he wanted to make other people just look bad and make KD look bad and pretty much show everyone that, no, I'm not trading KD, but I'll let everyone know what you're offering for him. I'll let your stars know what you're offering for him. And I think that was his whole point of it. It just to like kind of ruin the value. And he had his brother on TV like saying like, no trade is good. The Suns can't get him. I don't know why KD wants to go there. Like, all of that stuff was pretty much him leaking stuff out to make it seem like he wasn't going to trade KD at any point. With Dame, like, they have to get this out of the way. Like, it's going to be lingering over your season because Dame wants to go. It's not one of those things that he's going to let go now. He doesn't want to play with Scoot, and he's made that pretty obvious.
Okay, wait. Bobby Marks is not Sean Marks' brother. They both work for the Nets.
I know. I just made a joke.
Okay. I'm like, hold on. You made me Google it. I was like, one of them has an accent, the other one doesn't. Am I going crazy here? Okay. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's like the other part of it too is Josiah wasn't willing to deal with this, right? And I think that's kind of the other part, and that's what you and I were tweeting about too. Is like, I think Marks has a long leash. I thought they would fire Sean Marks last summer, but they got Durant and Kyrie to just chill, and it didn't get to that point. I think Marks is actually good at this part where he's going to now get to rebuild the team again because he did a pretty good job the first time. But it was all up to Josiah, and he has he's recently bought the team. He has the money to throw at future issues. So he has kind of a position of leverage where it's like, you know, if you guys leave, I'm not screwed. I'll buy a team. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'll pay to get players back here. And we're in New York City, you know, so I'm good. Whereas like the Allen family in Portland, I don't know what their vibe on this is. They don't seem to be as involved as some ownership groups are, but I don't know how much they can stomach the embarrassment in the same way that Josiah could. Josiah it felt like it became about his pride at a certain point, and that changed things. Whereas I don't know what things feel like in the Blazers situation. And if this does drag out, how does that affect the sale? They seem to say they don't want to sell the team. I don't know why they wouldn't, whatever. But that's a part of this too. The other way this is similar, and we can close on this, the Heat are in a very similar position to what the Suns were last summer, right? Like the Heat lost some talent. People were questioning what the kind of vibe and ceiling of the team was going to be able to be coming off of I know they overperformed all things considered, but this is year 3 of the core not being able to get over the hump and win the championship in Miami. Suns were in a similar spot after 2 great seasons that ended in disappointment. The Suns, I do think if you're giving the case for what Marks and Cy were able to do is that season sucked in Phoenix, right? And there was a level of desperation that comes along with that maybe there was a couple more picks or whatever that you're able to get after that type of a situation. I could see something similar happen with Miami where it's like, they don't have Gabe Vincent anymore. They don't have Max Strus. They signed a bunch of minimum guys, but Kyle Lowry is still their starting point guard, which is a big question. They could go into the season and it gets to January, February, and they're like 3 games under 500. And Pat Riley's like, all right, what needs to happen here? You know what I mean? Even if Portland were to bring Dame back, I do think there's a version of this where Miami gets desperate. So maybe that is the right move. I don't know.
Yeah, I can see the Blazers willing to wait this out because Miami has to win now. Like the Blazers are rebuilding, regardless of if Dame is there or not. They're rebuilding. They tried to hold off telling Dame that they were in a rebuilding phase all this time while they were doing it. And now it's very obvious that they are. So the fans know they're rebuilding. They know they're rebuilding. So you get a lot of leeway with that. You're going to lose games. Your players have to grow, all that. Miami was just in the finals and they lost a lot of people and it's going to be a tough season for them. And they know they need that last piece and they don't have the time to wait for it.
Yeah. It's interesting. What's funny to me is the place I'm getting is exactly what you and I started to become, like a broken record with by the, August, September days of last summer, which is at this point, it's all about how aggressive Dame and his camp are willing to get. Is he going to sit out? Is he going to go public and, instead of leaking stuff to Chris Haynes, do some sort of podcast or something where he gets crazy with it? I don't know. I don't think it's in guys' best interest to push it there. But the idea of Scoot Henderson coming off the bench and playing 18 minutes a game while Damian Lillard rolls it back out next year just feels unfathomable. So something's got to change there. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know which side's going to break first. And last year it was KD. He broke first and decided to come to camp and cooperate.
We said it a lot, though. We were like, how ugly can KD make this look? And we found out early, he didn't want to make it look ugly. Harden, he has all the ability to make things look ugly to get traded. And so does Kyrie. KD just never really had that type of vibe. Yeah,
we'll see. I don't think Damian Lillard does either, personally. So it could get weird here. It's just like Miami needs to cut the and really find a team for Lillard. Find the picks that they're going to be able to send out. Put Martin, put the rookies in, and just deal with it. It's a great player.
They could always just send him to a team he doesn't want to go. And then it's like, will you really not play for them? Are you serious about not playing for the team we send you? They could always do that.
They could, but then, the case that I made when people would throw that at me with Durant is, as much as we can say that players lose leverage when they try to do this with so much time left on their contract, there's also the inverse of it where it's like, so you're telling me the Utah Jazz are going to deal with 4 years of a pissed off Damian Lillard? The Raptors could make the risk with Kawhi because they knew at the end of the day, even if it went south, they only had to deal with it for 1 year. We always do it from the player's standpoint, but the team side is that way as well. Hey, discounted player because it's only 1 year. And if it goes to hell, well, we can pivot. And I think that actually helps teams more than we pretend.
Yeah, the Kawhi thing made it a lot easier because they knew he wasn't coming back. They just wanted that ring regardless.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Mat Ishbia responding to the accusations leveled against him about Isiah Thomas's role in a wonderful escapade of media tour by Chris Paul a few weeks back, as well as this bizarre alleged, but since disproven Nike Book One leak that may or may not have actually been real. All that after a word from Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs make you look good. They stretch and they give you space. So instead of just comfort or just fashion, which is usually what you have to pick between, Bird Dogs gives you both. They really do. I have 2 pairs. I have a workout pair. I have a comfort pair, kind of like around the house, errands, whatever you want to do. Both are amazing. And as I've said 100 times now, the best part living in Arizona is that they breathe. They have anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. and they call it cloud knit fabric that looks like khaki but stretches. Meaning if you're out in the sun, we're in whatever the 150th straight day of 110 or over, it feels like, you don't have to worry about stink or sweat stains or feeling uncomfortable. Bird Dogs breathe. They have that anti-sweat stuff, and they really work. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. Enter the promo code LockedOnNBA. Checkout. Free Yeti-style tumbler, hot drinks, cold drinks, whatever, on top of your order. It's free. It's promotional. It is right there for you. No purchase of a certain amount necessary. Just you get the tumbler with the purchase. birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA, or use the promo code LockedOnNBA at checkout. Closing out the show, let's talk about Mat Ishbia. Let's talk about Isiah Thomas. Let's talk about the Nike Book 1. All right, let's actually start with the shoes, because I think there's more meat on the bone there, Aaron. You and I were texting about this. There has since been some rumors and reports clarifying that this is actually maybe not a real promo or like initial release or prototype of Booker's signature sneaker with Nike. I'll let you describe the shoe for everybody and what your reaction was when the picture leaked from, I believe, KicksFinder, which is something I honestly had never heard of until yesterday.
The second I saw him, I was like, why's everybody posting skateboard shoes? Like, that was the first thing I thought. And then I saw that it was supposed to be for Book, and I was like, oh, God. And I'm in, like, an NBA group chat, and I saw that there was a lot of messages in there. And I knew once I saw the shoe and I saw the Book thing, I knew it was just a bunch of messages of me getting made fun of because of the shoe. And that's pretty much what it was. So, yeah, it was just they posted a skateboard shoe for Booker's first shoe, and yeah, I had to do some research to find out if it was real. And we have like the same barber who was my barber in high school, and I texted him immediately, and he was like, "No, that's not a real shoe." So
it does not seem to be real. And as maybe worried as I was when I saw it, and I saw a lot of people who were like, "Well, you know, he's very reserved. He's very like, you know, kind of low profile, so it makes sense he would have a sneaker that was similar and all this and that." But we've seen what his first kind of incarnations with Nike have been with the Protros and some of the, you know, lines of other shoes that he got a crack at as his partnership with them was growing. Like, I'm looking at the purples, I'm looking at the orange and whites, I'm looking at the kind of Valley themed kind of fade to sunset stuff that he's put out in the past. He had the Moss Point Air Force Ones. Like, yes, they might be low profile, but he has good taste. They're not ugly. Like, I don't think the final version of this is going to look anything like whatever these were, even if I don't fully buy the full response that we saw, which was like, oh no, this is a different line that Nike's developing, and it just happens to say Book on the tongue. Why would it have the nickname of one of your signature athletes on the tongue if it had nothing? So maybe it was something they were cooking up. I don't think it's his signature sneaker, though.
Yeah, I just don't know who's hooping in like suede black shoes, though. Like, that was like my point. Like, as a person that hoops regularly, that just doesn't work for anybody. Like,
no, and these people, like the designers and whatnot, are big into, you know, they want to have the whole write-up of a little pamphlet for you of all the technology for support and movement and athleticism and all this stuff that they want to show off. I really do not think that they would be, you know, it's just like a flat bottom with nothing. Like, it doesn't even, like you said, it does not even look like a basketball shoe. So I don't think this is, it might come out in some form or fashion. I do not think this is going to be the grand unveiling of Book's first shoe, although it is coming soon, and we'll see what it looks like. Let's pivot and close with Mat Ishbia responding to the accusations of Isiah Thomas's involvement in the front office. I will say that as far as his denial goes, it is funny to say that denial at the same time that Isiah Thomas is sitting courtside at all these summer league games with the Suns front office. You know, whatever. We know he's involved in some form or fashion, and Ishbia didn't exactly deny that in full, but he pretty much just said, you know, I have sought out the advice of everybody from Isiah to Tom Izzo to Mateen Cleaves to Charlie Bell and all these guys that, I mean, legitimately have roles at his mortgage company. So it's not exactly a surprise, but he did go out of his way to say that the Chris Paul trade and any other deals that have happened are being decided upon by people who actually work for the Suns. Do you believe this, or is this damage control?
I do believe it, especially once Vogel talked about how he wanted to play as a team on defense and all that stuff, like fighting over screens and fighting through them and man defense and all that stuff. I was like, yeah, Chris Paul was never going to do that. It wasn't going to work. So like with just like scheme wise, it seemed like a lot more people other than Isiah Thomas would have had to say in whether Chris Paul was on this team or not.
I agree with you. I also still would not be surprised if at some point some of these people get roles with the team. But yeah, I've also been,
at some point, who knows?
I've also been making the point though, and I don't know if you have thoughts on this, but they've been hiring really young. You know what I mean? And like I did a segment the other day when they hired the new GM of the Mercury, who's coming over from the Warriors and started out with Phoenix like 10 years ago. He's like in his mid 30s and he's about to be a GM of the Mercury, which has never, or not for a long time, have they had a standalone GM. And he's another guy who's young, similar to the president of the team and some of the front office additions that they've made. So I guess in that way, going out and getting, 60, 70-year-old Isiah Thomas, whatever he is, wouldn't exactly fit the trends that we're seeing. So maybe that's a good sign.
Yeah, and I think like they know sitting next to Isiah Thomas, they're going to get questions about it now. Like it's just one of those things. It's because they could have just sealed this easy and be like, yes, Isiah Thomas works for us. That's why he's over here. To just keep this lie going, it just doesn't make any sense. If he worked for us, just say it, and we can deal with that backlash now and hate it for a very long time. And if he doesn't, it's just your boy hanging out with you that went to the same college. Then that's fine.
Yeah, and I feel you're being done talking about this coming through a little bit, and I feel it. I do just want to ask like one last thing, just for the sake of conversation. Do you think the NBA would have do you think there's a part of this where the NBA would have an issue with him working for a team again? I mean, he works for their own media company right now. Yeah. So there's that, but like, I wonder if there's kind of an unspoken thing of like, same way John Gruden's not coming back, like Isiah Thomas is not going to work for a team again. There might be a kind of a thing there.
They let him talk about the NBA a lot though, like on their stuff. So I don't know. I think that once all the payments got put out, they're like, it's still Isiah Thomas, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. Like they seem to let him still work in NBA areas, and they don't seem to mind it. They let Karl Malone get honored at the All-Star break last week, last All-Star game. So I don't think the NBA really looks that far ahead on that kind of stuff.
No, I think most sports or leagues operate as like, we're too big to get too screwed over by any one thing. We'll handle it and put out the fire if we need to. I do think it's funny, speaking of Ishbia, though, that the Pistons still have the UWM patch. Like basically this summer league is kind of like the next season starting. And I had kind of figured like the weirdness around a team owner of another team, their company being featured on the patch of a different team would end. But they're out there, and Isiah Thompson still rocking a UWM patch on his Pistons jersey in Vegas, which is just very weird to me. Maybe it will be done by October, but Ishbia, I think Ishbia thought he was going to be more involved in Michigan and kind of had to pivot here.
Yeah, that one seems weird just because I don't think the league ever planned for it. That a dude would be sponsoring another team with his patch and owning another one. He's been wanting to own a team for a long time or be involved with it. I think that was his way of being involved while it was like a Michigan thing. But once he got the opportunity with Sarver being suspended, it was like, all right, I got another one. And they kind of just got themselves caught in this kind of weird situation.
Yeah, it's very harmless fun, but it is funny to see. I do, I mean, big W for Ishbia to own the Suns instead of the Detroit Pistons. But we'll see how it wraps up. That'll wrap us up. Hit follow or subscribe. We'll have a show tomorrow with Mike Prada of The Athletic, longtime SB Nation writer who started the Washington Wizards site over there, and we'll be breaking down all things Bradley Beal, his fit here, his growth over time. Is the injury stuff, is the shooting stuff an actual concern or just fake? We'll have that show to close out the week. We'll be here every day throughout the offseason and beyond. Hit follow or subscribe, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.